Have you ever wanted to be the first to know if aliens really exist? Well, with Nebula, you can be! Nebula is the streaming service that's home to It's Probably Not Aliens, as well as our YouTube channels. And the best part? All of our content goes up early on Nebula. So when we break first contact with ET, you'll be the first to find out. That's right, you'll be able to listen to the next episode of this show before anyone else. Plus, we post bonus content that you won't find any other place. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablynotaliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and be the first to know if this time it really is aliens. Mia Mulder of the Lafargue Institute. Can you tell me what you are looking at right now?
I believe I am looking at, I think, like the 1912 World Exhibition in, like, I want to say Chicago? Or New Orleans.
Wrong.
It's something like that.
It's the 1893 World Exhibition in Chicago.
Damn it.
Okay, so you just nailed it.
Fuck.
But what makes it look very not Chicago-y?
Okay, so there's a lot of Roman style architecture. There's a big statue that also looks very Roman. There's a lot of classical architecture and some neoclassical, along with a big lake. It's very grand. Mm-hmm. It looks very Roman, very ancient.
Yeah, and every single one of those. So I wanted to show you all those neoclassical palaces in the picture were constructed in about 18 months. They're basically paper mache creations, fancy paper mache, but paper mache nonetheless. Which I found out was extraordinarily flammable. They had to get a special exemption for hyper flammable buildings for the World Exhibition.
Well, because it is a world exhibition, right? You want to slap up something really quick and easy and cheap.
And Chicago, a city famous for not setting on fire, should definitely do that. And I'm sure that, Mia, you'll be surprised to know that millions of people on TikTok right now thinks that images like this prove that we are living in a civilization that had its entire history erased.
That's right. They're hiding the truth from us, Tristan.
Yup.
Because where did these buildings go? Where did they go?
You can't just tear down a paper mache building.
Why would they do that? Why would they hide the evidence of this grand civilization of Chicago?
The Chicago. This is a podcast. It's called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we debunk pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudoarchaeology. I always say conspiracy theories of a science fiction genre variety. Usually responding to Ancient Aliens, but it seems like Ancient Aliens hasn't yet picked up on this absolute glorious niche, so we brought in ourselves. But today, this is... now the whole season's going to be recorded out of order, so this is my first time recording since Scott left for paternity leave, but I think there's been 2 episodes before this already after that. But I'm Tristan Johnson, and tonight, I have a guest. While Scott is currently taking care of a brand new, very healthy, no problems baby. But my guest host today is Mia.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Mia Mulder of Mia Mulder fame. Hi.
Yay, it's your second time on the show.
Is it?
Yeah.
Have I been on the show before?
Yeah.
Fuck, I don't remember. I don't remember. When was I on last time? What did I do? I don't remember. This is crazy. I've been telling people all day, being like, "Oh, it's the first. I can't wait to go on this podcast for the first time."
We have done. The thing is that you and I were streaming buddies, and we have done so much stuff together that it's not.
Yeah, we did 1 trillion streams together.
We used to.
I think every week. I think for a while that was crazy.
I just accidentally tried to go look it up, and I googled Mia Mulder, but then it opened up Nebula, but Swedish Nebula. And it's the Anvandercookies.
Välkommen till Nebula.
The Anvandercookies, which
Vi använder cookies. Vill du acceptera det här? Eller säga nej? Jag nekar till dina cookies.
fake language.
So
Fake
elfish.
Yeah, elfish language.
Yeah, ridiculous language and culture.
Um,
It's not a very serious. You can't take Scandinavians seriously. That's why I moved to a much more serious country, France.
where the country everyone famously loves.
We use cookies.
News.
Like cookie.
News, la cookie. I do love that, like, because in Quebec, like, Quebec tries to identify itself as not French, and so, or not English. So they will do things like in France, the parking spot will be le stationnement. But in this one, they'd probably say, like, nous avons les biscuits.
I have seen on like Reddit Quebecian stop signs that says arrête, which is French for stop. But in France, the stop signs just say stop. Yeah. Like it's just you don't need to do all that.
Quebec has a thing called the OQLF, which is called the Office Québécois de la Langue Française, which gives out tickets to people who break the French rules, including one time where they ticketed a Italian restaurant for putting pasta on, for saying pasta instead of pat. Okay, so the episode that you were on for our Atlantis episode.
Right. Yes, I remember. Another fake civilization that they are hiding from us.
They increasing amounts of brackets around they. But yeah, so this is going to be, the dynamic is usually that I have a guest on who knows nothing. But the thing is that we're doing an inverse Scott in this one, where we're going to have two people who have done the research on the same topic, because Mia 2 years ago made a video on this exact topic, which meant when I listened to it or when I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh, this is, and it's probably not Aliens episode. So it's been in my quiver for years, and I knew it was going to come up. And I'm glad that we got you, the person who made the video, probably the person who gave the most attention to this topic outside of TikTok or Russia, to the masses, and then I get to make an episode and bring you on. And so, but I do think that there's some interesting differences in how we approached it based on our different geographies and stuff. So we are both historians.
Yeah, I have no idea how you've approached this. All I remember is, like, you told me what the topic was. I thought that I remembered absolutely nothing. And then, like, as I sat down for the recording, I was just like, oh no, I actually remember quite a lot about this insane batshit conspiracy theory that I devoted like 2 months of my life researching.
Slendy on, it's all coming back to me.
So this is gonna be fun. I have no idea where your notes are. Yeah, it is like I'm sitting down and it's just like I'm getting like war flashbacks of like fucking Russian meteorites containing white people and like, oh man, fucking weird swastikas.
Here's where I think where we came from different angles. I think that you have a much deeper knowledge of the Russia side of it than I do.
Because here's the thing, I don't not to step on your notes, right? Because like we're talking about Tartaria, right? Have you introduced what the conspiracy theory is called? You should. I should step back. Actually, I'm talking way too much.
Okay, I'll give you quick. Okay, so first of all, picture if you're podcast, if you're listening to this, you can close your eyes, but not if you're driving. I suggest you do not close your eyes if you're driving. But picture this, the most beautiful building you've ever seen in person. Maybe it's a train station or a museum or a courthouse or an old library that's made of, like, the carved stones, the soaring ceilings, lots of decorative details that make you stop and look at all the things. And now picture the newest building in your city. It's probably a glass box made of concrete. Maybe there's a Starbucks on the ground floor. So this is like the big thing. You're not imagining something, and this is my, like, on average, old buildings are more craftsman-y, more, in some ways, more beautiful and elegant than new ones. That's not like a nostalgia thing. There's a materialist reason for this, and I'm going to get into it a little bit later. But that distinction, where we have these older buildings that look like they have like all of this beauty and craftsmanship put into it, is contrasted with like these kind of glass cubes that we keep making. And it makes people think, like, why is it that we can't live up to the standards of like these things that were made theoretically 100 years ago? And it has led to, on TikTok, where a perfect platform for this kind of thing, where people are sharing with hundreds of millions of views that this aesthetic loss is evidence that history, all of it, except for Russia's history, is a lie. And yeah, it's called Tartaria, but sometimes it goes by the name of the mud flood theory, or Bloomberg City Lab had a really great nickname for it, which was the QAnon of architecture. But it might be one of the most seductive conspiracy theories you can encounter because it starts with something actually true and then kind of poisons an explanation. So today, we're not doing like aliens built the pyramids. This is like your great-great-grandparents lived through a civilizational reset and then the government erased it from history. And like, it's so recent that like, there are events where there are living people who experienced it that they say didn't happen. Namely World War II.
Yes.
So
there are so many levels of this theory. Like as you said, like the ground level of this is old buildings are pretty. Why can't we do this anymore? And then like the depths of the theory goes so deep that like at the end you're like, white people come from space. Genghis Khan was blonde. Like it's a very interesting theory. I love it. I'm obsessed with it.
It is one of the. I think that what sticks out to me is that there's few conspiracies in this where like there's so much, but like that is like so easily falsifiable. Like it is like ancient aliens
Yes.
makes the thing where it's like, yeah, take a archaeological gray area where we don't quite know the answer to something from like 6,000 years ago, and then just say aliens did it. But they're like, World War II was a hoax meant to hide the fact that like literally in the 19th century, the world was run by giants who were harvesting electricity from the atmosphere using massive pillars. So like this is we're talking. So a lot of the stuff that they claim here is like from the 1800s, a period where there were birth records, photographs, and newspapers. Things that, as I showed to Mia, in the photographs that are from that time taken with cameras at that time.
They're like, yeah, and people on TikTok treat it as if it's like super ancient history. There's this one trend which I hate, where people will take a photograph of a recently built cathedral, and then there will be like a horse and buggy on the ground next to it, and they will be like, could people with horse and buggies build this cathedral? Like the technology just doesn't match up. I mean, like the photo is being taken with a camera. Also, like, you could not build a buggy, first of all. Like, you think a horse and buggy is actually like quite advanced technology for a person. And also, like, they are not equivalent in difficulty. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So this is what we're talking about today. Mud flood, Tartaria, the land of white pickle sauce that you put with fish. I'm sorry, I forgot. That's probably a desecration to fish in Swedish circles. You're not supposed to. The proper way to eat fish is to rot it for several months and then put it in a can and then eat it with crackers and onions.
That's right. Yum, yum, yum. Delicious. I do actually, since moving to France, I do miss the rotted fish a little bit. I will say. They don't do it right. They don't do it right. It's too fresh.
You're like, what's it called? They got like the French police coming by being like, did you just bury your fish in the backyard? You're like, yeah, I'm eating it on Christmas. What are you talking about?
That implies the French police would care. Which,
I would imagine
my impressions of the French in general is that they don't.
I would think that the French police have like they enforce one kind of law, which is food crimes. I've heard stuff like I haven't been to France in a very long time, like almost 20 years at this point. But I do remember that people were like in France and they'd be like, "Hey, can I get this coffee with almond milk?" And they'd be like, "No, that's not you. No."
Yeah, I mean that's insane.
Incorrect.
To be fair.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start. Yeah.
But so the Tartaria theory, like for the record, there is like an ethnic group called Tartars. Has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, there's like
nothing at all.
Right, in Russia called Tatarstan.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with them.
Okay.
Zero connection. There is somehow a connection between white people's space meteorites and the Washington Monument, but the theory called Tartaria and the people who call themselves Tartars are not even within the theory. It's just like that's not. coincidence.
Now, does it have anything to do with the sauce that's made of mayonnaise, pickles, and chopped up capers that you have with fish?
I do have a vague memory of it actually having that, but I don't remember what it is.
And or does it have anything to
very
do
possible.
with the plaque that builds up on your teeth? I'm just trying to think of all the uses of tartar. Okay, I'm going to start. Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, you do your thing. I feel like I'm at risk of like nerding out on this topic because I'm getting like waves of memories flowing back at me. You take the lead, and I'll try to restrain myself.
It's gonna be complicated, internet listeners, because this is a topic that.
Why is it called the mud flood theory?
Well, okay. First of all, this is a topic that the two of us have nerded out about for a little while now with research, and two, we're like close friends who haven't talked in over almost 2 years, and so, and there's just a lot of energy in this. But I want to start by making, and I swear to God, I did my best, and this is that I start every episode with the strongest steelman version of the argument that I can, so that we can, make sure that we're not misrepresenting the theory. Now, as you mentioned, this shit goes so deep and gets so esoteric that I definitely had to rein it in, or else it could be an entire podcast in and of itself, like an entire show that you could run forever. But I have the 4 major claims that kind of tie into the same thing that we're talking about with this season of It's Probably Not Aliens. So number 1, and this is like the central one, there's a lost empire. So according to ancient giant theory, that there was at one point a globe-spanning civilization called Tartaria, or the Tartarian Empire, that dominated the world until roughly the 1850s. They had advanced technology, which included free energy that they harvested through the sky, using elaborate architecture, domes, spires, obelisks, those kinds of things. And they built all of these grand ornate structures that we now associate with what's called the Beaux-Arts movement in architecture. Sorry for the Americans. Beaux-Arts or Beaux-Arts buildings, the sort of like neoclassical 19th century architecture style, are all relics of this period. So the Capitol building in the US, the Louvre, the World's Fair buildings.
If you've seen a dome, like if you've seen a big dome on a building, they did that. They built that.
Basically anything that people can claim that are too beautiful to be modern, even like train stations and stuff like that, get wrapped up in this. Then what happened in the 1850s, which is claim 2, the mud flood. So in 1850, there was a global cataclysmic event, a mud flood that buried all of these buildings all around the world. Not completely, though, but enough to bury the first floors of all of these buildings. So what we are seeing, these old Beaux-Arts buildings, we are actually seeing like the top of a much larger structure. The most conservative version of it is that we are seeing like there's a whole story to these buildings that is underground, but TikTok can go as far as saying like these are like the tips of like, 3-kilometer tall towers that are buried under the mud. But I'm trying to give the least.
The pyramids are obelisks. Yeah. The White House is like a huge skyscraper.
Yeah. But I'm trying to give there are more conservative versions that say that basically just the first floor of a lot of these buildings is buried, including and one of the newest ones is that there's this complete nonsense. There's this UFO guy who bought some satellite imagery and used it to claim that there's these hidden pillars underneath the pyramids that has really built up into this. But claim 3, how come we don't know about all of this? And that is, well, first of all, this is why old buildings have windows at street level in their basements, or basement windows at street level, and why some buildings have doors that are now below the grade, and why historical buildings or historical photos sometimes show buildings that look shorter than they do today. So why don't we know about this? Well, that is because there is a massive cover-up. After the mud flood, all of the world governments, all the Victorian powers, the secret societies, whatever sort of metaphor for the Jews you want to use, engaged in a massive rewrite of all of human history. They demolished all of the remaining Tartarian structures, like all of those not papier-mâché buildings in Chicago. And then the ones that they kept, they attributed to various local civilizations and invented all of the history that we learn today. So they attribute certain destructive events like the Chicago Fire of 1871 and the World Wars as hoaxes that were meant to cover up for the destruction of the evidence and the truth about Tartaria, which, yeah.
And like, depending on the severity of the conspiracy, like some of them do claim like that the world wars did happen, but the reason was so that they could destroy all of those buildings and hide the evidence. So they did two whole world wars to cover it up.
And that leads us to claim 4, which is that us, modern humanity, are what are called a reset population. We're primitive settlers who are squatting in the ruins of our betters, and told that we built these structures with horses and buggies. We'll get to that. When the truth is that we have actually been downgraded. We're actually a lesser version of our past. That the world used to have free energy, magnificent public architecture, and advanced transport systems, and they took it from you. Who's they? Don't ask such logical questions. It's the same people who took away the Nintendo 64 for those people who make those, like, look what they took from you. It's just like...
the British.
The British did take a lot from us, let's be fair. Hey, and they're the ones with the tartar sauce, so maybe this is this pieces are being put together already.
But yeah, does it sound convincing yet?
You like it? You guys?
I love this theory so much, by the way. I'm obsessed with it because of how extremely nonsensical it is. And as you said earlier, how easy it is to disprove. I actually saw, like, on Reddit, like just a couple of weeks ago, like right before you contacted me about this, I saw someone share a blog post about their own theory that St. Petersburg wasn't built, it was excavated.
Oh my god.
I'm just like, sure, why not? Fuck it.
Might as well say that Vladimir Putin did it himself.
We can just say whatever
right?
we want these days.
So that's where Vladimir Putin's from,
Yeah.
right? So
God, he comes from an asteroid in space.
I mean, actually, I kind of buy that. He has a kind of reptilian quality to him that kind of follows. Okay.
He does a little bit.
They're not I'll point out that they're not saying this about structures in the desert that might be thousands of years old. They're saying this about buildings that you can currently go to right now, and buildings that have construction records, buildings where we know the architect's name and the companies and how much they cost to make. But the core claim is that right now we can't reproduce this kind of beauty. We can't make a Louvre today. We can't make a White House today.
The freaking White House is the White House is used as an example. Like we can't build the White House? What are you talking about? They're building it right now.
They just destroyed half of it to turn it into a fucking ballroom. But that's
like you can like, some people cite the Empire State Building, and like you can see pictures of every single stage of its construction. Like it's so
you can see pictures of it being built. But yeah, that's the whole move. This is they basically have turned aesthetic preference into this sort of epistemology, which is a fancy way of saying that, like, they have basically taken their preference and said that because they like it more this way, that is then true. And so,
which is like not totally unfair, because like there is I would say there is a real frustration, I think, among a lot of people that's like all modern architecture is ugly, right? And like there is material reasons for why it's like this.
We will go there.
But like it is a real frustration, and like the material reasons why maybe aren't super well understood by, like, you know, by just thinking about it yourself for like a little bit. Like once you do some research into why it's like this, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're just a normal person having the idea of like, why are all buildings ugly today? There's not an obvious answer as to why. And then you hear this shit, and it might for some people sound like a reasonable answer.
So now let's go into these one by one. Because the real story, I think, is weirder, more impressive, and a little bit more horrifying than the conspiracy. And it requires us to talk about something that conspiracy theorists hate, which is the history of urban planning. So I want to start with the first one about the claim about basement windows prove that the buildings were buried. So it is true that old buildings, you'll see in many places, old buildings that have windows at or below street level and doors that are below grade, buried first floors. And Tartaria believers will say that this shows that there was a mud flood that buried cities sometime in the mid-1800s. So there's two ways that you can look at this. You'll see like a person on TikTok say like, they say this building was built in 1890, but look, the first floor is underground. You're telling me that they built it that way? But like, and like, to be the most generous that you possibly can, in like really, really old cities, like if you go to London, there are lots of buildings like this because the city's just been around for so long that like kind of accumulation just kind of happens. And in Chicago, for example, that makes no sense because Chicago's a new city. But instead, what happened is Chicago did something 10 times more insane that you actually think they did, and is the reason for this. So Chicago and many other cities, but Chicago has the most like best like record of this, literally rose the entire city up by like by several feet. So from 1855 until the 1860s, Chicago actually rose the entire city.
Just like decided to make a new street level two floors up.
And the reason was,
but Tristan, that doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone do that?
Oh,
why would anyone do that?
Thank you.
That sounds like a myth.
Thank you, Mia.
That you're saying.
The reason is because Chicago is an extraordinarily insane place to build a city because it was built on a swamp with basically no drainage. So every time it rained, and keep in mind, this is the 19th century, so basically every time it rained, this sewage just sort of spilled onto the streets. So everyone's waste just sort of spilled onto the city streets. And so the city made this decision that they probably need to have like an actual sewer or something. So they needed to raise the entire street level 4 to 6 feet in order to install a proper sewer. And the way they did it is one of the most insane things I've ever heard in my life. First of all, they did not close down the buildings when they were doing this. So people were still in the buildings, cooking dinner, doing whatever, while they were literally raising the building up 4 to 6 feet. What they would do is they would get approximately 600 men and 6,000 screw jacks. And then they would have like a foreman with like a whistle. And every time he blew the whistle, everybody was supposed to move 1/4 turn and basically simultaneously lift up the whole building by like maybe like 5 or 6 centimeters. And then just keep doing that until you get to 4 to 6 feet. And then they'd fill in the street level around and repaved everything. And they did this to thousands of buildings. It's documented in newspapers, there's engineering journals, there's city records, and photographs of buildings that are mid-lift. So like there's tons of tangible evidence that they literally did this. But as I explained, them being buried, because not every building owner could afford to do that. So you did get buildings where the original ground floor is now kind of partially below the street level. That's yeah.
So now you make the first floor, that's the basement now. Second floor, first floor of the basement. And then you just, put in the new front door 2 floors up.
Yeah. And like that is literally why
also, like, it's not just Chicago that's done this. Like cities have been doing this like since there have been cities, because cities flood and floods suck. So if you can build higher up, you do better. And it's easy to build on top of buildings that are already there because they're already built.
Yeah, we built a bunch of cities before realizing in the 19th century that maybe throwing all of our sewage out the window was not a smart idea. And we're like, oh, crap. Guess we're going to have to build some sewers. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, we don't have any place for sewers because underground is like a swamp or something like that.
It's water. Yeah.
And so this is like one of the few solutions you can do. And yeah, so like every city,
why do people think that that the ground is just perfectly even in like where people decided to build cities? No, people paved shit out. They filled in the gaps and they made everything flat as fuck.
And again, like this also stuff happens naturally. Like you like Mia, you have lived in cities that are thousands of years old. I have not. The city I'm living in is celebrating turning 200, which would make it a wee baby by European standards. But like, yes. Again, like cities like London, you can find buildings that are also like this just because like in the thousands of years, stuff has just kind of accumulated around them. But yeah, like the thing is that it's also some of the things that are pointed to as claims of like these buildings being buried are also just regular parts of modernization. Like, for example, London did this for the sewers and to build the London Underground. Seattle had a giant fire and they did it. And Manhattan did it multiple times to build their subway system. And on top of that,
Yeah, because it's easier to just like raise the ground a little bit. It's easy to do that.
You can just you can just lift a building apparently if you want to. If you really want to, you can just do that. And there's also a completely normal architectural feature called a light well or an areaway, which is a recessed space in front of a building, in front of the basement windows, specifically for another thing that kind of doesn't get through them. Not the infinite energy from the sky, but for coal. A lot of these buildings were from a time where all of their heating and their power was coal, and so they wanted to have a way to do coal deliveries and servant access without without having to drag it through the central lobby, right? So they would have like these. It was very standard in 19th century urban design to build these kind of like incensed areas so that you could get the coal directly into the boiler room, as an example.
Yeah, but so unlimited, free, healthy, clean energy, coal, right?
You're the new.
I don't see the problem.
We also need to announce that Mia is now becoming the new American Secretary of Energy and the Environment. You're the head of the EPA.
I love clean coal. So take it out and they clean it. I would love to be the head of the EPA. Please let me be in charge of your nuclear weapons. I can be trusted.
It'd be interesting because I imagine that, because I'm thinking about how Sweden is everyone's steel exporter, which means that Sweden must still have a shitload of coal it needs to use.
I don't think so. I think we're more an iron exporter more than anything.
So you don't forge, you take it somewhere else.
We do have a lot of steel. We have clean steel now that doesn't use coal somehow. I don't know how. They're very proud of that. Every fucking Swedish subway station has an ad being like, "We have clean steel."
Oh, it's they probably use something called.
I don't know how.
Oh, it's cool. It's called an induction forge, and it uses rapidly.
That sounds like some woke bullshit.
Yeah, it uses rapidly oscillating magnetic fields to create heat in metal and enough to actually do stuff. It's insane.
So you're telling me that's real, but infinite energy harvested from domes is not real? That's you're lying.
It definitely seems like some kind of insane sci-fi shit, but it is a thing. It's crazy. Okay, so yeah, the mystery of basement windows is just evidence that infrastructure has changed over time. And that cities are living organisms and this is one of the things I think because you're a big city builder fan of the video games.
Yeah.
And this is a thing I've always talked about where it's this is where there's a gap in the city builder genre, because cities aren't like SimCity where you can just start from scratch and make everything new. Every time you make something, you build something, it is a huge investment and will be part of the architecture for potentially centuries, if not millennia. And they're very it's much easier to alter things than it is to destroy them and rebuild them. So some things look weird because cities are living ecosystems of new things, old things, altered things, rebuilt things that were built at a time when people got a really weird idea and then having to undo that entire idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this image of how cities and buildings are built as you said, starting from scratch. And when they imagine sort of how they would do it starting from scratch, it never looks like the way it's done in real life. And that incongruence leads them to be like, oh, well, maybe it's fucking Tartaria. It's fucking mudflood. But as you say, just that's not how cities work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not how people work.
Yeah.
But it's not super intuitive. So it's again this thing of if you decide to do the research into answering that question, it does make sense, but a lot of people won't, because why? You can't do research on every question you have on why the world is the way it is. Because we're not all walking encyclopedia pages.
That's how you make people like us, as if you do, and no, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But
nerds who read Wikipedia for fun.
Yeah, but yeah, streets will sometimes get raised to make sewers. They'll get lowered to make subways. Buildings will get additions, renovations, new, for example, new changes will be made to make them ADA compliant or whatever, to make them disability compliant, or to have fire escapes added because fire safety became a thing we started caring about. But the Tartaria theory will take all of these architectural oddities and see it as evidence of a conspiracy rather than evidence that just time exists. and that urban design is.
And I mean that's that's like a normal part of a conspiracy too, as well, right? Of claiming that every evidence against the theory is proof of the conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, like it's impossible to disprove it because every evidence of its disproval is evidence of the conspiracy against it.
So I want to get now into. What's up?
I think I want to do a quick comment here also because like it's so impossible to do. Like I think that you've done a really good job so far of sort of like breaking down sort of the foundations of what this theory is. Because I remember when I made my video on the topic of like every fucking TikToker has their own version of the theory because it's such a huge game of telephone where someone will be like, the pyramids are obelisks, and then someone else will be like, the obelisks harvest energy from the moon. And it's just like, what? Yeah. What? Like everyone just adds a new level of crazy town onto this theory. So like,
yeah,
you're doing a good job keeping it somewhat grounded.
Yeah, I'm trying to go for the
because it's so easy to get overboard so fast.
I'm trying to keep my focus on the main weight bearing pillars of it. So the next part I got here is that the world fairs are actually like those like neoclassical buildings that are now gone are actually pictures of ancient cities that we then destroyed to try to hide the truth of the Tartarian Empire. And you'll see this in like a lot of the kind of late 19th, early 20th century World's Fairs. So the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exhibition, the 1915 San Francisco Panama Pacific Exposition, the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, that these aren't like, they didn't make like temporary exhibition spaces, but like that these were ancient Tartarian cities that the governments revealed and then destroyed to hide the truth. And so
because why would you build a paper mache building? That makes no sense. Such a grand, beautiful building, and you would just destroy it? That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's weird.
Which kind of fair, because like we don't really do World's Fairs like this anymore. You know what I mean? Like now everyone just rents out a conference hall.
A new proposal for the for your think tank's policies, and that is we need to bring back World's Fairs and exhibitions. But yeah,
like the really fucked up weird kind where every country has to build their own weird pavilion.
Yeah, they have to build a new building that then becomes an iconic part of its landscape. Like you have to build a new tower or like I think about.
But it can only last like 4 or 5 years, and you have to build it within like a week.
Or you end up with things like the like Eiffel Tower, which was built in like a year and a half, and then is like still around today. But yeah, like the thing is that they did like they'll be like people will be like you think you want to believe that they built all of this in 18 months, and the answer is yes. And let me tell you how they did it, because they used something called staff. It's not quite plaster. It's not quite paper mache. It's not paper mache, but it's a little bit more high level than that.
It's fancy paper mache. I don't know what staff is. I have never heard of this actually.
Okay, so basically,
I didn't look into the actual construction of the World's Fair stuff.
See, this is I told you we came at it from different angles. I like this. So it's a composite material where you take plaster of Paris, which is made with gypsum, and then you mix it with fibers, usually like hemp, jute, or like other kind of plant fibers. And then occasionally you'll also mix it with cement. And then this can be molded into panels or cast into these like intricate ornamental details. And it's really good at taking paint. And when it's raw, it actually kind of looks like stone or marble from a distance. And it can be mass produced. It's cheap, fast, and temporary, which if you're running an exhibition is great. It was first...
It's like Renderite.
Yeah. It was first pioneered at the 1878 Paris Exposition, and it was refined in 1889. So by the time of the 1893 Chicago World Exhibition, the process was streamlined. They would build wood frames for all the buildings with, lumber, mold it. So they would cast or form staff panels in bulk using reusable molds. Peak 19th century industrialized technology. Then they would attach it with a interesting type of ancient technology called nails.
What?
They would use nails to
magic
to make the panels directly together using a wood frame, using like furring strips, and then they would paint it to give everything a uniform white coating, so to make it look like marble. And then they would light it using electric lighting, which was itself at that time like a new kind of show-off technology. So it was like a way to be fancy. So it's not stone; it's like it's like theater scenery. And for 1893 Chicago Fair, they covered over 600 acres of the city with these constructions, over 200 buildings over approximately, and they built that in approximately 18 months. Most of them were designed to be about 2 years or last about 2 years, but just along to have the fair and then the teardown time. So it was perfect. The reason
makes a lot of sense so far.
Yeah.
To a reasonable person.
And there's a reason why somebody would do this, and that is that it was a period where the United States was kind of coming out on the world stage. Like, this was the time where all the countries were competing against each other to show how technologically advanced and how advanced their capitalist economies were. It was spectacle. Every World's Fair was an attempt for a country to do a nationalist propaganda project, because these World Fairs were propaganda, nationalism, business expo, and a sort of cultural flex all at the same time.
There's a really interesting view. I think, I don't remember. I think it's like 1920. No, it's like 1935 or something like that. World's Fair in Berlin or Paris or something, where Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union have a pavilion each, and they're facing each other, and you can really. And like, this one, never becomes like conspiracy theory material because it's quite modern and it's very obvious what they're doing, because it's just like, oh yeah, there's the Nazi German one. They're doing a Nazi German monument to Nazi German ideology, and the Soviet Union one is doing a communism monument to sort of like, and they trying to, as you said, like flex on the world stage and show off what they can do and sort of what their vibe is.
Yeah. They're all kind of showing off
because
like,
this
their
is
new
before the
ideology.
internet, you know what I mean?
And they're also trying to show off, like for example, Nazis were like, look, fascism. Look how great fascism is, everybody. And then the Soviets would be like, hey, communism, guys. Here's how great communism is. Like, it was soft power. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Overall, this thing for Chicago cost them about $28 million, which today would be about $900 million. So just under $1 billion. And was funded by private investors, by the city, and by the federal government, because they wanted to demonstrate in American industrial might. They wanted to attract international business. They wanted to. Chicago had kind of a reputation from the fire of being kind of a bit of a mess, so they wanted to fix Chicago's reputation, and also.
Yeah, that worked.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chicago. I love you, but come on.
Being on fire is kind of your thing. But also, they have to charge admission to millions of people, and they wanted to, have something that would bring ticket buyers. So you build it cheap, you make it look permanent, you charge people to a tour, and then you tear it down when the profit period ends.
Like,
it's perfect.
They're still doing World's Fairs.
Are they?
Like, to be fair, like, oh yeah, they do, but they don't do the thing where they build pavilions in a park and spend a bunch of money. They just like rent out, like a conference hall and have like a conference, because it's like a conference now more than anything else. Like, people have panels. It's like NationCon.
Ooh.
But because they don't build the fucking magnificent structures anymore, like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's lame. But yeah, like, one example is the Palace of Fine Arts, which was built for the San Francisco Panama Pacific Exposition in 1915. They built this gorgeous rotunda with a lagoon, a weeping Atlas figure holding up the dome, and this whole like romantic ruin aesthetic. Tartaria points to it and says, look at that craftsmanship. No way they built this in a temporary exhibit. But in 1915, they built it as a staff and wood temporary structure. It was designed by a guy named Bernard Maybeck, who specifically made it look like a romantic ruin. And then after the fair, it was demolished as was planned, and the Palace of Fine Arts was left standing because people liked it. It deteriorated badly over decades because it was never meant to last that long. And then in 1965, they had to completely demolish it and rebuild it with permanent materials based on the original design because it was just falling apart. So the building that people point to is like, this ancient technology is literally built in the 1960s as a reconstruction of a 1915 stage set to look ancient.
And like, that's the case with a ton of these like world stage stuff, like a World's Fair buildings. So a lot of them people just like, and they decide to keep them and renovate them so that they last.
Yeah.
But a lot of it people don't like because they build these like gaudy, weird buildings and monuments, and people don't want that. People want like, a school,
yeah,
or like a park. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want fucking plasterboard.
Yeah. What's it called? Paging Dr. Baudrillard on that one. I feel like there's some simulation going on there. I also want to talk about this because this is the thing that I think explains the difference in possibilities in a very important way, which is that industrial area construction, so like 19th century construction, worked differently because this is the thing that conspiracy theories always want to erase, which is the workers, the people who made these things. So, for example, the reason why the Chicago Fair was able to construct all those things in 18 months is because they employed thousands of people who organized under industrial labor discipline. They had specialized crews of excavators, framers, plasterers, painters, electricians who had specific tasks. They worked fixed hours on time sequences, had coordinated deliveries, which we all have like paper records of, and they molded the staff. Installed it in bulk. They had foremen who enforced the pace, architects who approved the work, engineers who solved problems on the fly, and they use the same thing that defines the 19th century, the factory model. They broke a complex work down to repetitive tasks, coordinated them precisely, and then pushed for more speed. And another thing that sticks out, and this explains a lot of why buildings are different today than they were 150 years ago, which is that many workers back then were recent immigrants from places like Germany, Italy, Sweden.
If you're talking Chicago, that's fucking Swedes, baby.
They would often work 10 to 12 hours a day. The mass production meant that the materials were cheap, and that combination made it much more rational because, basically hiring stonemasons and stuff like that was really easy because labor was really cheap back then, and it is not cheap today.
Where would you even get stonemasons these days?
I don't even know. I'm sure
because you could get like hundreds of stonemasons at the time to decorate your fucking building. Now you're lucky if you get like a stonemason. Do people become stonemasons? No, they become podcasters like us.
Podcasting is the new stonemason, with a secret society and everything.
Oh God.
Yeah. So that's what made it work. And also for these temporary constructions, another reason they were able to do it fast is because they were able to cut like every corner. They didn't have to listen to any rules about fire codes or structural standards because they were temporary buildings. And they were designed entirely to be showy. So they didn't have any function or much function. But still, like the idea of like, I still think there's something cool about the sheer audacity of saying, let's build a fake Rome in 6 months and convince the world America is like, this like great power. There's a lot of it was basically a nationalist dick measuring contest, but these are genuine technological achievements that show like that they couldn't have done that in like 1750, and it just shows how much things had changed in such a short period of time.
It really is like a marvel of the time.
Yeah,
but it's not fucking evidence of the mud flood.
Yeah,
the Tartarian Empire.
Exactly. And also there's this assumption that also says that people in the 1800s with their, as you said, their horses and buggies and hand tools couldn't have built these elaborate, ornate, massive structures. But the thing is that labor was cheap. So, skill.
Also, like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why do people look at a person with a horse and buggy be like, they had horse and buggy, but this cannot possibly coexist with the beauty of wonderful buildings? It's like if you would put like someone on a bike next to a space rocket and be like, people on a bike couldn't possibly have built this space rocket, being like, that makes what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is the dumbest argument. I actually feel really offended on behalf of the horse and buggy for some reason. Like, I feel weirdly defensive over the buggy as a technology. Because it's not as simple as people think it is. I don't think anyone who's a proponent of the Tartaria theory who like points on fucking TikTok videos on this thing, I don't think any of them could make a buggy.
Or
like with an infinity amount of tools or time, they could not build a buggy. There are gears that go into that shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. There are wheels.
They also forget about other things that existed in 1850, like steam-powered cranes and all sorts of like steam-powered technology that could lift heavy things and move things. But yeah, labor was cheap. Materials were expensive. So that's like the big thing that was like defining construction is. So there's lots of people, lots of workforce, lots of immigrants that could be exploited. Skilled craft labor was more expensive, but a lot cheaper than it is today. But materials were expensive. Stone had to be quarried, transport. Iron was industrial, but not yet mass produced at a modern scale. And so time was less expensive than materials, which meant that you had to make the most out of all of your materials, but you had all the time in the world to get people to make like fancy Greco-Roman architecture in your skyscraper that was meant to just have like magazine offices in them. But today,
Yeah.
due to horrible things like minimum wages, safety regulations, unions, that labor is now expensive. But materials are now cheap. Steel is now
Concrete.
Steel.
Love steel and concrete.
Steel is now way more easy to mass produce. Concrete is now ubiquitous. Glass is also easy to make. And there are now global supply chains so that these things can be made pretty much anywhere all over the world. But time is what's expensive. So financing, opportunity costs, the pressure to open and start generating revenue is high. So now the materials are cheap, but the time to make the building is low. So this means that in the 19th century, if you wanted an elaborate building, there was an economically rational way to do it, was to hire a lot of artisans for a long time. Paying stonemasons to carve ornate details wasn't an extraordinary expense. But modern building is optimized for a different constraint. They want to minimize the amount of labor they use. They use a lot of prefabricated components, simple designs, fast installation, but maximize the material efficiency. So steel frames, curtain walls, repeated modules, and because they want to get tenants into the building fast, because lots of people pool all their money together to get it built, and they want to make a return on their thing. And that is the reason why buildings today look quote unquote cheaper than older ones.
Because they gotta be built like cubes. Building the cube is easy, quick and easy, done as quick as possible. And that's why like delays in building ruin budgets.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a 6-month delay in a building that you would build in the 1850s? People would just be like, okay,
sure,
more Greco-Roman columns, I guess.
We'll just get our we'll get our column guy in and do it. And the other thing too is that I got a column guy. Yeah. The thing is that also there's the thing that really ticks me off about it is that this is erasing, again, this happens under capitalism all the time, but the Tartarian people are doing even more, is talking about who builds these buildings. Like, for example, one of the Tartarian favorites is Grand Central Station in New York, which was built in a 10-year period between 1903 and 1913. And the people who built it were Irish immigrants, thousands of them, Italian stonemasons, structural engineers and architects, excavation crews, electricians, plumbers, glaziers, painters. Workers died during construction, and often in numbers that we don't have records of because immigrant worker safety was just not a priority. And the construction was organized through labor contractors, payment systems, timed milestones with financial penalties for delays, foremen who enforced discipline, including firing workers who didn't keep pace, and dangerous conditions because there was no OSHA back then. So
you've seen pictures of people building the Empire State Building and sitting on the steel girder, loose, having their lunch, and that shit came after.
Yeah,
that's more modern than Grand Central Station.
So there was this whole thing where industrial discipline started to be attributed or started to be applied to construction, which made things faster, but it made them much more dangerous, like everything in the 19th century. But these workers were incredibly skilled because a stonemason in 1900 could read architectural drawings. They could carve elaborate details by hand with really high precision. They understood structural load and how to cut stone to bear weight. And they trained apprentices in techniques that they passed down through generations. And we haven't lost that knowledge, but we've really lost the economic incentive to use it. As you mentioned, there's a stonemason now. You can hire somebody to carve that. It just costs $200 an hour to do. And on top of that, yes, they used, as you mentioned, they used horses. They also used steam-powered cranes, steam-powered trains for transport, mechanized quarrying equipment, industrial scale brick and iron production, and also railroads, factories, the telegraph to communicate, and a lot of more sophisticated engineering knowledge. So it wasn't the Middle Ages.
Yeah. A lot of these mudflood videos really do seem to think that everything before color television was the Dark Ages.
Oof. Yeah, it's that's where I want to get.
Which is wild because sometimes they'll show pictures from 1950s and be like, "How could they have built this?" It was the 50s. What do you mean? Ask your grandma.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is also where I think that we need to talk about the thing that not only that happens with Tartaria, but happens in general with these kinds of creations, which is that these people don't get the record. When we talk about Grand Central Station, we'll say that it was designed by Reed and Stem and Warren and Wetmore, the architects. It was commissioned by the Vanderbilts, the wealthy railroad family. and that it was built.
Hold on, the ones that are hiding, the ones that are covering it up, the Vanderbilts.
Vanderbilt. Oh, okay.
They are part of them.
They're part of the them. Oh no.
Sorry.
But that, then it was built between the years.
They have a spooky name, which means that they're involved in evil stuff.
I mean, they probably were
According
involved
to
in
the
some evil
fucking
stuff, but
weirdos.
different evil stuff.
Probably.
Very mundane evil stuff. But we don't say when we talk about how Grand Central got built that it was built by thousands of Irish and Italian workers, some of whom died, most of whose names were never recorded. And so when we tell history in a capitalist economy, we credit the people who hired the labor, not the people who actually did the work to build it. We remember the financiers and the architects, but the actual people who mix the concrete are just like reduced to a statistic. And then the conspiracy theorists will then double erase them by taking that invisibility and making it complete. And now it's not even the Vanderbilts built it. Now it's humans couldn't have built it at all. And it had to be like giants or whatever. It's almost like this is the kind of thing I wanted to come down to on this, is like it's a literalization of the erasure that capitalism already performs on the labor that it takes to do this kind of stuff.
Shit sucks.
Yeah. Again, 12-hour days, dangerous conditions, subsistence wages. And this is the kind of thing I wanted to talk about. Like, these people worked in horrible conditions, but they still produced like really beautiful work. And they should get proper credit for the things they do. They could have been angry, resentful, or the work could have been like angry, resentful, or shoddy. But oftentimes, and sometimes they did, there were labor strikes, sabotage incidences, quality disputes in the record. But a lot of them, even though this was hard, dangerous work, took a lot of pride in it. They trained their apprentices. If you look at a lot of these buildings, you'll find that they sign their names in little hidden corners.
Yeah. Like bricks occasionally will have like signatures, and like stones will have like carvings of various dates and initials and stuff. It's really cute.
Just one that says "This is very high," like in Istanbul or whatever. No, they weren't Vikings. They weren't that. They weren't like historical shit posters like the Vikings. But that's they erased.
I mean, some of them probably were. Some of them probably wrote some weird shit, but it's 1920s shit posting.
Somebody said the word
which
damn.
Is more like, darn it! I ate a baseball.
My
Chicago. Yeah. I don't know what Chicago does.
My mind always goes back to how you can like find these like drawings from like when they were building like the big Egyptian monuments of like an animal having sex with the pharaoh or something like that. But yeah, the thing is that they built these things that would outlast them because they actually cared about their craft. And I think that like the human story here is that people create meaning and beauty even when they're being exploited. Yeah. And so it's not about fantasizing about lost Tartarians, but to demand that the people who work today, like, construction workers and service workers and, everybody should get the dignity and pay and safety of those workers were denied, and we're increasingly being denied today. And that's why they're so beautiful, is that so many people took pride in making these things, because it was that. But who is the person pushing this? What is the whole thing?
Oh God.
But Mia, first I want to tell you about something. Have you ever heard of product or service?
I love product and or service. I can exchange money for product and or service.
Well, everybody exchange money for this product and or service right now.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Memorial Day sale and get 30% off paints and stains May 15th through the 28th. Whether you're refreshing your interior or exterior, we've got the colors to bring your vision to life. And with delivery, getting everything to your door is easier than ever. Shop online to have it delivered or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details. Delivery available on qualifying orders.
I loved that product and or service, Tristan. Thank you so much for showing me the product and or service.
99% chance it was Nebula. And I do love that. So yeah.
It is a good product and or service.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to trace a very, very strange path from Anatoly Fomenko to TikTok. Tartaria did not emerge organically from curious amateurs on TikTok. It actually has a specific origin and ideological function, and it has been amplified deliberately. So I want to talk to you, Mia, about a person that you know.
It's part of psychological warfare currently.
Let's talk about a man by the name of Anatoly Fomenko. The intellectual foundation of this whole new thing, if we can call it an intellectual foundation, comes from the work of a Russian mathematician named Anatoly Fomenko and something called New Chronology.
Yes.
He was an actual mathematician. He was a geometrist and a topologist.
Topologist, yeah.
Yeah. And he worked in the 19...
Which is a math thing about shapes, which I don't understand.
He was a shape guy. And he...
Loves his shapes. What if history was a shape?
What if history was a shape? Yeah, kind of. And in the 1980s, so this is a period when the Soviet Union was like, teetering on the edge of collapse. He published this series of books. These books that claim that conventional history, all of it is wrong, but not in small ways. All of history before the 17th century is completely made up. So ancient Egypt, Rome, Greece, China are all misdated duplicates of much more recent events. And that nearly every ancient empire is actually secretly the Russian Empire or Russian connected civilization.
Yes, it's all Russia. There's one good example, which is like the Crusades and the Trojan War it's the same event.
Oh,
it's just different language describing the same event, according to him. So, and I think that's like, so ancient history and medieval history it's actually the same history, but kind of duplicated to sort of fill out more time on the historical timeline. It's batshit.
Yeah, it goes so deep. And like as you mentioned on this, the Mongol Empire was Russians. Genghis Khan was actually a Russian warlord by the name of Ivan Kalita.
Oh God, yeah, he has a bunch of specific theories too, which I forgot about. Because like Fomenko he's not a proponent of the mud flood specifically, right? Like this is just where
there's an evolution. Yeah,
there's an evolution of it. Just so people know that this is a different but very related conspiracy theory.
This is like the mud flood theory's grandpa. The golden
proto theory. So proto mud.
Like many Russian things, I feel like, or many like nationalist things, I feel like I've heard this about every time. Like I've heard like many people say things like this: the Golden Horde, Russia; ancient Rome, also Russia. And that period in the time of Rome where Russia was invaded by the Huns, who were also Russian, who were attacking the Russians.
Yeah.
But history as we know it actually was invented in the 16th or 17th century by the Jesuits. And Western historians who want to diminish Russian greatness. And
that's right.
And this wasn't a fringe thing. In the 1990s, these were actually big bestsellers during kind of like this post-Soviet identity crisis that Russia went through, where they were like, oh no, we're not the Soviet Union anymore. What are we going to be? I guess we're going to be a strange place for oligarchs to do whatever they want. Thanks, America.
Russia had a weird boom in like alternate history fiction at this time also. Like if you're a fan of like alternate history bullshit, Russia is like the world center of alternate history fiction in general. And it stems kind of from this similar vibe of like, history hasn't been super kind to us, the Russian people. What if it was fake?
Yeah.
What if it was different? And there's this like big desire to imagine history as being something different, either as fiction or as Fomenko does, just pretending that actually everything good in history was us, and it's the fucking Jesuits.
Yeah. So very much the book is like, this civilization would achieve this, and then Fomenko would be like, actually it was Russia. They just covered it up. And it got weaponized as a sort of like Russian identity politics because at the point, like when the Soviet Union broke up, Russia had not been its own country without its sort of imperial, like, holdings for like, even like back in like during the empire. Like countries like Poland were not independent during like, the 19th century. And like
this is the smallest Russia basically has ever been for like 1,000 years.
Yeah. So like this meant like they lost like Ukraine, Belarus, which literally means little Russia, and like Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, like a whole bunch of countries that were part of like kind of the Soviet Union or their sphere had been kind of taken away as if like they owned them, but they were just no longer part of the Russian Empire anymore.
Taken away by the fucking Jesuits.
So they were trying to like
in the West.
Yeah, they were trying to kind of redefine what it meant to be Russian in a without communism to be kind of the thing to be to rally around. And it led to weird things. It led to like national Bolshevism, which was like, what if we were commie Nazis, literally? Or
I don't know if you're gonna mention this man, but I'm gonna ask just now so that I know if I'm gonna if I will bring him up or not. Do you mention Nikolai Levashov in this evolution?
Literally, the next line is Nikolai Levashov.
God bless.
Yeah,
yes.
I like how the way this has gone.
Speaking of weird Nazi shit, we're getting into weird, esoteric, weirder stuff. Fomenko is not the weirdest person here. Levashov is he's the connective tissue.
Yeah.
of what if everything was Russia and what if the White House was an ancient empire?
Yeah, this is how you know that you and I operate on the same brain wavelength, because literally as we're going down multiple times, Mia does not have the access to the notes I have here. She has just like literally moved on to the very next thing that I was about to say. I forgot how like we're like so in sync on these things. So yeah, let's talk about Nikolai Levashov and about Aryan Russian mysticism.
Yes.
And so this is where the story starts to get weirder, but also explicitly fascist. So Nikolai Levashov, who fortunately died in 2012, took Fomenko's work and added tons of weird race mysticism to it, and made a ancient Aryan Slavic civilization, which was either called Great Tartaria or Hyperborea, which is so funny because the Aryans, I believe, thought that Slavic people were basically subhuman slaves. If I remember my Nazi ideology.
They were actually the even purer white people were the actual Slavics, the Russian Slavics. They're the most pure people.
We know that Adolf Hitler had a detailed plan to conquer Ukraine and then give it back to the Ukrainians because they were so pure. And so,
well, it's because he was controlled by the fucking
Jesuits.
Well, I mean, Levashov blames a lot of people, I feel like.
So there were and that the Russian ancestors were also giants, and they had psychic powers, and that the Jews had conspired to erase Russian history. It was very anti-Western, very anti-Semitic, and really nationalist. And so Levashov,
and weirdly mystical as well.
Yeah.
Like he has this whole thing about like how race is not just like there's a lot of race talk here. Race is not just like an ethnic thing; it's also like a spiritual thing. So like depending on like how much you have of the 7 different cosmic elements, that's what makes up your race. And that's how we know Genghis Khan was like super white and also a giant.
That makes sense.
And also
the thing
Russian.
Is that because of this podcast, I am so immersed in esoteric Nazism that like none of this phases me. This is all just like super normal. But Levashov and others in his sort of space started using Tartaria as the name for this like pan-Eurasian Russian Empire. And in these versions, Tartaria is just a name for like Greater Russia. So a way to claim that all of Central Asia, Siberia, and often parts of Europe all belonged to this Russian superstate.
Including like basically all of China.
Yeah. And then this feeds, it also gets a lot of heat because it feeds directly into, it feeds into the rhetoric of current Russian President Vladimir Putin, who then will use this kind of thing to, not directly, he's not that stupid, but he will say things that definitely are gesturing in that direction, like saying Ukraine isn't a real country, historically it's part of Russia. He's also said that Kazakhstan is not a real nation.
Yes. So it goes into this. It goes into this thing of like it serves as a type of Russian nationalist propaganda because it paints basically most countries around Russia as like false constructions. Like there is no such thing as Finland. Actually, that's just something that the fucking Western Jews invented to sort of discredit what Greater Russia is, and like a true Russian is like the natural inheritor of basically the entire Eurasian continent. So like all the Baltic countries, Poland, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, China, Kazakhstan, all the like Central Asian countries, like all of them are like false constructions that don't really have any legitimacy. The only thing that has really legitimacy is Russia.
Yeah. So, and this sounds weird to us in the West, but the thing is that it makes a lot of sense to the Russian nationalist lens, because even if you're not going fully down like the giants with psychic powers, a lot of Russians will believe that like these areas are part of Russia. They're like part of our identity, part of our continuous. And oftentimes, the more like sanitized version of this kind of thinking or this kind of rhetoric is that like the Westerners with like their NGOs and stuff like that in these countries are building a false national identity that is breaking these away from Russia as a sort of threat to their power. Like that's like mainstream like right-wing nationalist Russia talk. Like,
yep.
And the thing is that it's also kind of one of those things that's kind of seated on truth, because one of the things that did happen is that like when Russia was really struggling after the Soviet Union collapsed, America kind of was like, go fuck yourself, and then said, oh, also we're never going to expand NATO out east, and then immediately started expanding NATO out east. And so like
that was not a real promise. Not to be I'm not in favor of NATO in any but like there was no agreement that said that.
I know. But like the whole thing is like America did take it as an opportunity, or the West did take it as an opportunity to expand its influence into former Soviet states. Not that it was without invitation or that like these countries had no say in it. Many times they did, because countries like, for example, I think Estonia is part of NATO, or
yes.
at least would, yeah. And like the thing is that Estonia does, because Estonia joined the Soviet Union like in like the 1940s. Like it was a very late addition. Stalin invaded Estonia.
And has like a Russian-speaking like population in the eastern part, much like Ukraine, which how that turned out.
A lot of these countries, like one of my friends is from Azerbaijan, and like lots of people in Azerbaijan learn Russian because it's like kind of become like a kind of second language in a lot of these countries, because during the Soviet times, every country you learned your like local language and you learned Russian because it was like the common language. So there are a lot of Russian speakers because
it's like why I speak English, just because like I grew up in a Western aligned country where English is sort of like the common language. But if you grew up in a sphere of influence where Russian is the common language, then a lot of people will learn Russian. So I mean like I bet I'm gonna preamble your notes here again, but like, do you have, because like I have no evidence of this entirely, but I have a strong suspicion that the mud flood theory and its connected sort of like esoteric vibes started becoming a lot more popular on Western social media around 2014.
You're very slightly off.
And
2016 is when we kind of see the start of 2014 was when the annexation of Crimea happened, right? And then 2016 we start to see more a sort of move as like Russia's like now like one of Russia's things is like, well, we're not going to be able to counter the West on like straight military power. So they started fucking with our shit. I don't know if you noticed, but the world kind of went insane over the last like decade and change. And not that Russia is the complete source of that, but they definitely were egging it on, and they definitely seeded it in various places. They basically, instead of saying that like, because I'm not going to go full, Democrat lib and say that Russia did all of this, but they took a house that was definitely on the verge of collapsing and started poking it very hard.
And it's worth mentioning also that like Russia has been for like over 2 decades now, like building a massive operation of psychological warfare, which I think it's a bit difficult for a lot of people in the West generally to sort of like fully accept is like a thing that is happening, because it's like that's not a thing nations do to each other, and like for the most part it's not, but Russia straight up is. I remember when I was an elected official in a small municipality, right, like population like 60,000, like not a lot of people, small municipality,
and gave Swedish nuclear secrets.
No,
okay.
No, this is a real thing. Like Russian intelligence would continuously like try to like do some kind of scam in my professional like politician email inbox continuously, and like I would occasionally get like mail to my office with like weird reports like written in Swedish as if they came from like some institution, and I would be like, this is not real. And then a week or so would go, and then I would get like a message from like Swedish Psychological Defense Ministry being like,
Yeah.
the Russians did this thing. And like every week we would have a thing of like the Russians have been trying to get into our servers because they want access to our like electrical grid network information. And it's just like, this is an ongoing thing that has been happening, especially like in nations close to Russia for decades now. And they're really good at it. So I am fully convinced that the whole mud flood theory is that like for sure a Russian psyop. That doesn't mean anything. That's only there to sort of like fuck around and like lower the trust into institutions as
well,
all
like
these
Russia's,
conspiracy
and that's another
theories
thing.
do.
And like this is like it's a case of asymmetric warfare because they know they don't have the direct economic or military capacity to like take on NATO. So this is how they do it. But like on top of that, Russia is really good at this, and they always have been, even in the Soviet days, which is that they take something that has like genuine issues associated with it, and then they just give it more of a voice. Like Russia today has had some like, is like a propaganda outlet, and on top of that also says actual true shit about the United States on a pretty regular basis. And that makes things complicated because you're like, by being legitimately angry about real things that are actually happening, you then also end up kind of pushing Russia's agenda. It's so weird, and it makes it and it's clever. It's it's a clever country to do that kind of thing.
Because like this goes into sort of like the idea of like being like this is them like this is the work of like one guy in like this massive institutions of thousands of people doing this asymmetrical warfare. So it's a very small part of it, but like one person whose job it is to appeal to Westerners who are upset with how ugly modern buildings are built. Like that's a small demographic of people, but they exist. And like if you can get them and get them hooked into something, you can start getting them down this weird rabbit hole where at the end of it, you believe that like the real rulers of the world, where everything is good and nice and perfect, are the Russians. And like that's a small angle to work, but someone's got to do it.
I would love to see what the actual experiences have been of like those people who took up like those like chuds who took up like the Russian blanket citizenship for anybody who wants to escape the woke West or whatever. I'm curious what that would. Yeah,
the fucking shared values visa.
So 2016 to 2018, we start seeing Tartaria break containment, and when it breaks containment, it starts like because it's like divorced from the Russian context, nationalist context. It goes to people who don't have that kind of Russian nationalism as part of their cultural milieu, and so it starts mutating and becoming really weird at a really fast pace. So YouTube channels started making Tartaria explain videos that often just completely stripped out the Russian nationalist angle. And then you started seeing Reddit communities like r/Tartaria, r/cultural layer that aggregated this evidence, like the basement windows, the old maps, the World Fair photos. And then it merged with other conspiracies that were popular in the English-speaking West, like ancient aliens, Atlantis, free energy suppression, the Illuminati, the Great Reset, and then added itself into like a modular conspiracy. So you could plug it into the Freemasons, the Rothschilds, the reptilians, the globalists. Yeah.
Fucking vaccines.
And
like
then
everything.
Fucking TikTok happens in 2018. And short form video is perfect for it because a quick slideshow with sepia photos of ornate buildings and ominous music and text overlay, you don't need to do any deep research or sourcing. And if you can just move from one thing to the next without thinking about it too much, which overrides some of your critical thinking ability. For this season, I talked to a professor named Dr. Cortland Pippert, who did a dissertation on the History Channel, but she also studied conspiracy TikTok specifically, and she put her finger on something that I think is key. She said that creators are doing something that looks like when you like look at these things, and this is the part where like, because we were talking about media literacy, and I think you'll find this really interesting. I like this kind of blew my mind, was that when you look at these like content creators like Mudflip people, they're doing something that actually kind of looks like critical media analysis. They're checking sources, they're tracing claims, they're reading footnotes, but and so she called it what's called the comm major gone bad. They have the moves, they're just starting from a false position and sourcing from, as she put it, weird out-of-print books that they read through Amazon for 99 cents that were self-published in the 1970s. And also fiction. Like they cite The Simpsons for historical evidence. And the problem is not that they don't have analytical posture. It's not like they're like not like they're just absorbing things. It's that their entire foundation is rotten, and they are using critical thinking skills to make it even worse.
Oh yeah, because like you will see people advocating the Tartaria theory, like you said, with like old maps and stuff. Like they will find like really old like maps with that are fully authentic and that are fully real, that have been used and everything, that have like Tartaria written on it on the place where they claim it to be, which sounds like it could be some type of evidence. But completely disregarding like why the thing is the way it is. Like as you say, like they're starting from the position to justify the conspiracy theory, so they will find evidence to support it without ever checking the meaning of that evidence.
And the content they make is very beautiful. It's very engaging. It's very mysterious and transgressive, which gave it lots and lots of engagement. And so you saw things like hashtag Tartaria and hashtag Mudflood generating hundreds of millions of views, a humongous reach. And while Russian nationalists often gets lost, there's the structure of like an advanced white/European ancestor, the idea of the present being degenerate, elites covering up a greatness, and a call to wake up and reject the official narrative, which sounds a hell of a lot like fascism. It certainly is saying a lot of fascism things. At the same time, like it's just more like they're just kind of being more flexible about who the villain is. And on top of that, then TikTok doesn't care too much about accuracy in this case. And so the platform just was like, oh, here is content that is getting engagement. Well, we should amplify this so that it gets more engagement, so more people go on app. And so the For You feed, which is all optimized around watch time, likes, shares, comments, takes videos that often provoke strong feelings like curiosity, anger, and validation, and then learns what keeps you watching longer, and then shows you more of that, which then means that once you dip your toes into Tartaria, it is now the only thing that you will get. Specifically the same.
I had to reset my TikTok after I made my video on Tartaria and like the Russian conspiracy theory stuff, just because it was like, oh, this is all I'm getting now. Every second video, my TikTok was split into thirds of 1/3 dogs, 1/3 trans women looking more beautiful than I could ever imagine anyone human being ever being, and then everything else is just like weird, like slow funk music with like AI generated pictures of old buildings and being like, what's going
this
on?
is still all fucking pre-AI.
Us?
AI things that get even more fucking crazy. Because then they can make things that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this was at the later end of it, but
because then things can even get like you can even make things that look more legitimate. And to the point now where it's like it's good enough that you can make pretty compelling content. It's insane. But yeah, the thing is, like, you go down that. I think what happens is like when an algorithm learns that you like a specific thing, and it's like a new thing, it'll be the only thing it shows you. I've seen this on YouTube as well. But like we have seen this, like you and I are kind of the product of this, where YouTube was doing this in like 2015, and that's what led people to go from like video game content to anti-feminist content to then like white nationalist stuff. They were like radicalizing themselves down by this algorithm trying to give you more extreme versions of the things that you engage with. But yeah, the thing is, Tartaria is visually striking. It's emotionally resonant. It's very participatory. Like everybody can participate in the ARG of making up all their own evidence. And it gives you an in-group status that sees through the lies. You get a community. You build an identity around it.
God, it's so dumb though with the whole like, because the barrier to entry is so low, because like once you see it and once you think about it for a second, you go outside and you see a basement window and you're like,
yeah,
I'm gonna become a critical thinker. And then you start losing your mind because you start thinking about hidden basements and shit.
And like researchers have found that if you even look for mainstream topics on TikTok, you'll find misinformation in the top results. TikTok is a very, very fun platform, but it has very weak moderation for things like pseudo-history, because it doesn't trigger the same red flags as things like hate speech or medical misinformation, which are the things that they typically look out for. And even then, they're not that great at looking out for that either.
It'll be fine now, though, right? Because they're owned by... Yeah, now it's owned by, like, America.
TikTok in America is owned by America.
So it'll be fine now, right? Oh, right. Wait, so am I on Chinese TikTok?
You still get the good Chinese shit.
I'm not even on TikTok. Glory to Xi Jinping.
President Xi, please save us.
Long live the People's Revolution.
So what started as Russian nationalist pseudo-history then becomes this like ambient cultural content that millions of people encounter without any context or counter narrative. You get onto this feedback loop of conspiracy content does well, then it promotes more conspiracy content, more creators make more conspiracy content because it's profitable, and then more viewers encounter conspiracy content, and then the worldview normalizes around the conspiracy, and all of a sudden you have QAnon and just the rise of the far right in the West over the last decade. Okay, so I do need to close out. I feel like we could go on forever, but let's just say that like
I could legitimately talk about
yeah.
this for days. Like I feel like you're doing a really good job at like condensing this into something that's actually like listenable. But
your video on this was like 2 hours, wasn't it?
If we start talking about yeah, because I made 3 of them. Because I made one about the mud flood, one about new chronology, and one about Levashov. Like, because they're all connected. So it probably adds up to like 2 hours or something. It's so good. Like, if this was a fictional novel, I would be enraptured. Like this beats Game of Thrones to me. I love Game of Thrones, but this is better than Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? It sucks that it's a conspiracy theory and not like a fiction.
Well, like kind of to give a TikTok explanation of things. One of the things that like I noticed is that like just like a couple days ago, because I would get like Trench Crusade lore videos, because you know I'm weak like that.
Oh God. I got that too. I have no idea what Trench Crusade is. I've been scared to look into it.
It's a war game.
It's like Warhammer, but weird.
It's Warhammer it's made by former Warhammer people and a former artist for like Diablo 3 or something. But it is basically like the premise of it is it's a grimdark setting set in 1914, where in 1099 the Knights Templar accidentally opened a hellmouth in Jerusalem, and the Christendom has been at war with like literal demons from hell for like 900 years.
But the thing is, like, this sounds eerily close to something Levashov would probably talk about.
But the thing is that it's a setting where, like, because I talked about this on an episode of the podcast earlier too, which is that they when people got mad that Warhammer 40K was going to have Lady Space Marines, a bunch of chuds were like, let's go to Trench Crusade. This looks badass. And then like the people who make Trench Crusade were like, no, we have like lots of like queer women and like all sorts of like, like we have a very diverse workplace and like all this kind of stuff. And like, so they like literally like closed their Discord server and kicked all these people out. And then they're doing this thing. It's good stuff. Although I've been,
I am compelled to say the words that it sounds like Trench Crusade is woke.
Trench Crusade's a little bit woke, yeah.
Which is a crazy thing based on what I've seen of Trench Crusade.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, it sounds like it would be not woke, but
it's the kind of not woke thing that you would find only Europeans could think of.
Okay, so there's also like a train management aspect of it. I see.
To kind of bring it back, is that it then was like, hey, would you like this lore video about A Song of Ice and Fire? And I was like, sure. I read those books like a decade ago. I wouldn't mind like remembering some of the interesting dark stuff in there. And now I had a day where like every other video was Song of Ice and Fire lore videos, including the same one multiple times on different accounts. But to kind of like ask like, so what? People believe weird things on the internet all the time. What harm does Tartaria do? Why does this matter for like our current moment? Well, the first thing is that to kind of go back a little bit is that under capitalism, labor is systematically erased from history. And when we talk about who built something, we usually credit, again, architects, financiers, sometimes contractors. We build museums about architects. We name buildings after donors. We write history books about robber barons and industrialists, but we don't talk about the stonemasons who made the details, the laborers who hauled the materials, the workers who died on the job, or the immigrants who made up the bulk of the workforce, or the families who suffered poverty wages while their labor built these palaces. And the second erasure that then Tartaria comes and performs this kind of second erasure. Now it's not just that workers don't get credit. The workers couldn't have possibly have done it at all. And every time somebody says they couldn't have built something like this with horse and buggies, or that primitive settlers could not have achieved this, or that this is too advanced for that era, what they're saying is that the real workers who built it don't count as human achievement, that collective human effort is impossible without superior beings, and that ordinary people can't create greatness. And that's insidious, because the most insidious part is that Tartaria claims to be anti-elite while removing the like people who actually made the things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the thing is that it's not just like, it is profound. It's a profoundly stupid theory, but it's also very seductive.
I mean, I do think that is worth mentioning. Like, I don't have a lot of respect for people who actually believe in this stuff because it is really stupid. I do agree. There is an attractive aspect to it. Like, I get it, and I do realize that everyone can fall for conspiracy shit. Like, I recognize it's not, but like it's not like even Bush did 9/11 has more grit to it than this shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not very. They're not sending the best.
But we are being primed very much for this because we're in a period where we're very alienated. Most people are working jobs where they feel like they're replaceable. We're told that our labor has no value beyond its like market price that's always shrinking. And we see collective achievements like infrastructure and public goods. We don't see them being built. We see them being dismantled, defunded, or privatized. So we experience economic precarity and told that it's like this kind of individual failure. So Tartaria then comes around and offers an explanation. So you feel powerless. You are. Humanity is actually a downgrade of something better that was in the past. So we're just living in the ruins of better people than we could possibly be, and that is
which is fascism.
Yeah. Well, that is essential to all of right-wing ideology. Like, right-wing ideology does believe in like a strict, immovable hierarchy of people. But to a certain type of person, there's a satisfyingness in in a way of feeling like you understand your place in the world, in a way that materialist analysis is not going to do, because materialist analysis would say that you are powerless because capital accumulation concentrates wealth and political power, and organizing collectively is hard, but it is doable. While Tartaria will say you're powerless because of cosmic and historical forces beyond anyone's control, and that there's nothing you can do except recognize the lie. So it's an invitation to not do anything except post.
It is.
And when I talked to Dr. Pepper about this, she pointed out that like conspiracy theories happen to address a lot of these social anxieties. They're about our fears at the end of the day. And she's right. The question Tartaria is actually answering isn't about who built this building, but why do I feel like the world I was promised doesn't exist anymore? Because that's the real fear. That's the failure of material politics to address that fear is actually the vacuum that Tartaria then floods in. Yeah. And people choose conspiracy over politics as a form of like dealing with that exhaustion. Oh,
it's a cope.
Yeah. It's a cope because we have been not only not taught, but intentionally taught to think away from these kinds of things, while all we have seen, like you and I are both under 40 years old, although I'm getting very close. Not very close. 2028, everybody. But I still got time. But like there's this whole
time before what? To do what?
I don't know.
To beat aging?
Time to enter time machine. I don't know. But the important thing is that like we have everybody who is under the age of like 50 or 60 right now really only understands a world where we have been progressively selling off and like degrading and like literally like letting the things that we have built rot. The only country that is actually building things right now is the People's Republic of China, where like every time they're like, oh yeah, we built a new fusion.
And the People's
we built a new fusion reactor and we turned a desert into a forest with solar panels and everything. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about a warning from a guy named Walter Benjamin, who was a German Jewish critical theorist from 1935, who was writing as Hitler was consolidating his power. He wrote an essay called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. And he diagnosed exactly what fascism does with culture. Quote, fascism sees its salvation in giving the masses not their right, but instead a chance to express themselves. The logical result of fascism is the introduction of aesthetics into political life. So fascism replaces politics with aesthetics. Instead of giving people control over their lives, like their economic rights and representation and material security, fascism gives them rallies, uniforms, symbols, and big narratives about greatness without the feeling of participating, without any actual power. And I think that Tartaria does this. You see beautiful buildings as evidence of a glorious past, a grand narrative about a lost civilization, the feeling of being awoken to a hidden truth and a community of other believers. It doesn't threaten existing power structures. It doesn't organize workers. It never demands redistribution, and it never builds any political coalitions. Instead, asks you to look at beautiful things and conclude that the truth is hidden and greatness has been lost, and maybe can be found again if we just, get rid of democracy.
I mean, you can find like similar types of expressions of that frustration among a lot of like far right movements. Like I know like Swedish far right people occasionally will just have this like weird outburst of like, oh, we need to build buildings pretty again. Oh, we need to have like national romantic art again. And it's just like, what does that have to do with anything? You know what I mean? Like why? But like, because that is what really matters to them.
Yeah. And
it's the vibes.
Yeah, and it also is in a conspiracy ecosystem because it can also be a gateway drug to things like what's going to be a common thing about talks about the Great Reset or Great Replacement. The idea of like there's a greater conspiracy megastructure where all of these theories build off of and reinforce each other. Great Reset, the idea that the elites are trying to use things like climate change and COVID to impose authoritarianism, which Tartaria literally argues has already happened back in the 1850s, or Great Replacement, where white nationalists believe that elites are orchestrating a mass immigration to replace the white population, an active destruction of civilization and replacement, which is basically like Tartaria's idea that like we intentionally wiped out this previous civilization and could do it again. And all these kind of cross-pollinate and build. And back in like Russia, these kinds of ideas also were used to justify things like diminishing Ukraine's right to exist independently, and is much of like the propaganda effort, not to this extent, but is definitely in the same vein as the effort that Russians use to justify the, now 4-year long war that's been going on, like almost exactly the day, that has claimed like endless lives and might threaten to like tear the entire world order apart as a result. So yeah. So okay, I have a couple things. I anti-doomer action. One, if you find out a cool piece of architecture, look at the people who actually built them. Look for like those little hidden signatures or the companies that did it, or like, the labor disputes or strikes that happened during its construction, or people who died on the job. Like, the 600 workers at peak who built the Brooklyn Bridge, the 27 who died building it. Or demand beauty through organizing. So fight for beauty in the present, not the past. So if you want beautiful public architecture again, you can change the incentive structures, like public investment in civic architecture, like libraries, schools, transit, parks, or labor unions that can negotiate for working conditions that allow craft and care, or design standards that prioritize human scale and community input over cost minimization. Change the incentives. And yeah, just stay away from any ideology that implies degeneration or erases workers, or requires a conspiracy to explain how it changed and share the actual history of what happened. So, all to say, sorry, I'm like saying so many things. It's so long. This is like the end of the Lord of the Rings for conclusions.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's a good call to action.
But you're not wrong to think that old buildings are more beautiful. It's mostly a matter of taste. But you're also not wrong to feel that something has been lost. You're not wrong to distrust institutions that have lied before, because they lie a lot. But you have to ask, why do buildings feel soulless? It's not a global conspiracy, but the optimization for profit. And
I also think that if I just want to chime in here, I think that there is also like a big choice in highlighting sort of like a specific type of architecture in these things. Because like if you look like all of the old buildings people find beautiful, they're old and beautiful because people like that they are beautiful and they maintain them well. If you should try also to look at somewhat modern buildings that are well maintained and that are also beautiful in their own way in another architectural style, and try to imagine sort of like how that can be beautiful in its own way. You know what I mean? Like it's not all just because it has columns doesn't mean it's better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all taste at the end of the day.
As long as it's well maintained. So like, is it really pretty or is it just well maintained? You know what I mean?
Yep. And and on top of that, I think that there are cases where people have gone the extra mile to make really beautiful things that didn't just, capitulate to capital on every single decision. I wish there was more of it, especially when it came to things like, like the Soviets built beautiful subway stations because that was the thing that their culture put pride in. Or, there's like times where they built we built beautiful libraries, and like, if governments built more things, they don't have to work on maximizing profit margins and can actually make things beautiful.
There are a few pictures of like public housing in Germany, which they're taken on like a beautiful summer's day, and they're well maintained, and they are really beautiful, but they are like almost brutalist in their construction, and like you would not, like if you went there, you wouldn't be like, this is a beautiful building that the Tartarians built, because it's obviously like something you built in the 70s, but it's beautiful, and like there's a beauty in that as well.
Yeah. All right. Final end thing. The conspiracy is not that we never built these things. The conspiracy in this world is that we never bothered to record the names of the people who did build these things. We never bothered to honor their sacrifices and their efforts. And we'd rather believe in lost civilization and acknowledge that immigrant labor is what built a lot of America's monuments, but just poor labor in general everywhere. That's the real conspiracy and the erasure, like the erasure of history, right? Like that's the real history we erased, is the people who actually built these things, and the crime that we did it. So the way that we address that is by honoring that beauty is not by inventing fantasies about who made it, but by demanding that today's workers, our construction workers, our service workers, get the dignity, the safety, the pay, and the honor that 19th century workers were denied. We fight for beauty by fighting for workers. That's the real lesson of Tartaria, is that's how you resist like aestheticizing politics. You remember that beauty is made by human hands, and you fight like hell to make sure those hands are treated with respect. Mic drop. There you go.
Or you'll catch these hands.
You'll catch these hands, these human hands. Mia, tell us all about the stuff you're doing and where they can find to consume Mia content, as we used to say.
Oh God in heaven. Oh Jesus. Oh Christ. I make YouTube videos. Go to youtube.com/Mia Mulder. I make YouTube videos. They're good. By the time this comes out, I'll also probably have a website for the big tent left-wing think tank, the Paul Lafargue Institute, which is named after the author of The Right to Be Lazy, because I'm a bit of a... I believe that labor rights is not just recognizing labor, but also giving those hands a long weekend.
Yeah. I would settle for what France has.
Like yeah, they fucking riot hard here for increasing the retirement age. I do like that. A few years ago, there was a big riot here for raising the retirement age, and Sweden also just raised the retirement age way higher than the French did. And I was in Sweden at the time, and I was struck by the difference in care, because the French, like, they will burn down entire cities. The Swedes don't fucking care.
France has a lot of things going for them, and they got it because they fought for it. That's the way to put it.
They got it because they fought for it. Sometimes they took it. Sometimes they took it from other people. Sometimes they did
from
like
Africa, Southeast Asia, and like the Caribbean. But yeah, but when it comes to like their workers' rights and stuff like that, they put up their fists and fight for that shit. Another thing you can fight for, on top of liking and subscribing and watching all of Mia Mulder's content, because it's all really, really good. One of my faves,
thank you,
is you can go to Probs Not Aliens on Bluesky and keep up with the show and everything. You can check out my channel, Step Back, which by the time this comes out, I should have a couple of videos for my grand return after over a year of silence. And Scott has a brand new bebe, so if you can give him some AdSense by watching his videos. Yeah.
Check that baby out.
You can watch NerdSync videos, NERDSYNC. Just, send him some love. And then if you want to help out the show, you can go to nebula.tv/probablynotaliens. If you sign up for Nebula, through that, you get a kickback, and it really helps. And it's just, if you want to help with like the little fund we've got for the editors and like equipment for the show, we have a patreon.com/probsnotaliens. Both Nebula and Patreon followers get a extra episode at the end of the season and episodes a week early. But if you don't want to spend money, which makes sense, shit's fucked. Our shit's all fucked right now.
It's shit's all fucked. That's why also, like, that's why you've been gone for a while. I've been gone for a while. Like, shit's fucked. It's been hard.
Shit's fucked. Yeah.
It's been difficult. I and not to interrupt anything, but I feel so bad because I have multiple podcasts that I would like to sort of shout
Yeah.
out, but none of them are official yet, so I can't. Because I don't know when they're gonna be released. But if you're a fan of this stuff, keep an eye out for podcasts that I'll be on.
Look out for podcasts that have Mia Mulder in them.
Secret podcasts.
Secret podcast. Yeah, if you don't have money, reviews are always useful on, promoting and getting the show to more people, and also just telling your friends or your enemies or grandparents, whichever one you want. And you can send them all to probsnotaliens.com. So that's
send your enemies.
Send your enemies. That's all we got. So until next time, you're Mia Mulder.
I am.
And I'm Tristan Johnson. All right, the truth is out there.
Det är förmodligen inte utomjordingar.
So the truth is out there, whatever Mia said. Okay. And that's an episode. Whew.
God bless. That was fun.